Welcome, my dear Victorians, to the 5th monthly update video for Victoria 3. My name is Sanna, I'm part of the community team for Victoria, and this month we're turning our focus to diplomacy. Our first topic is rank and prestige.
A country's rank is how it is viewed by the rest of the world, whether they be their neighbors, another nation across the globe, or just their rival who's sitting next door and not happy with how they are handling their matters. The country's rank will determine how many actions or how much interest or the amount of diplomatic maneuvers they have during a diplomatic play. Starting at the higher end of the spectrum, nations can be a great power, which means that they have proven their might. They are the strongest nation in the world, or they are one of the top ones. Important thing to remember in Victoria 3 is that there is no set number of great powers. Any country can be a great power if it meets the requirements. A country's rank is determined by two factors, one being its prestige and the other whether it's recognized or not. Whether a country is recognized or unrecognized, or a great power or an insignificant power, will determine how many actions they can do during the course of the game. These actions can range from the amount of diplomatic maneuvers they can do in a diplomatic play, which we will talk about later, or the amount of influence that they will have across the globe. Great powers in this instance will be the greatest powers on the globe. They will be able to do the most amount of actions, they will be able to influence most amount of nations at any given time. As mentioned earlier, prestige is one of the main factors of determining a country's rank. Many factors go into the calculation of the prestige for each nation. Whether it's the size of their army, the majestic nature of their massive armada that's protecting their islands and colonies abroad, or just simply how powerful that country is economically displayed through their GDP. All these factors will lead into the prestige and consequently the rank of that nation.
Now we know a bit more about how to reach the top. Our next topic is relations, infamy, and interests.
Relations is a measurement of two countries' diplomatic stance with each other, and it's bilateral. So whatever you think of France, France also thinks the same about you. So this is your official diplomatic attitude. Relations is a numeric value that ranges from -100 to +100, with negative values being some sort of bad relation, whereas positive values is various degrees of good relations. But each individual range, so like -60 to -40, also has a label, like cold in this particular case. And that cold relation means that there are certain actions that you're able to take against that country and they are able to take against you that aren't available if the relations were warmer. Those who have played other PDS games, of course, will recognize this relations value as one of the factors that go into determining if an AI is going to react positively or negatively to one of your diplomatic overtures. If you are playing in a multiplayer game, there is a reason for you to damage relations with human players, which gives the AI now something to react to because they're seeing you change your attitude towards someone else. Relations is something that you can impact as a player by using your influence points to improve or decrease relations with other countries. There are also one-time events that can occur throughout the game, either as part of random things that happen or as part of diplomatic incidents or diplomatic actions that we will learn about a little later that will affect relations as well. Infamy is a measure of how the global community, and particularly the great powers, feel about you and your exploits. So if you are being very aggressive towards your neighbors, depending on who those neighbors are and your right to make the kind of claims that you do, they will feel more or less threatened by you. And if you accumulate too much, there will be very negative consequences to you as a country. But as long as you keep it minimal and keep your influence up to make sure that this infamy goes away over time, you'll be okay. At various points in the game, especially as you make aggressive diplomatic plays, you will be causing diplomatic incidents. Those diplomatic incidents occur in a particular area of the world, and the effect of them is that they generate infamy for you as a country, but they also damage the relations with anyone that is present in that part of the world. Interests don't provide you with any kind of special bonuses outside of the diplomatic gameplay. What it permits you to do is have a say in diplomatic plays that go on in that area. That can be a double-edged sword, because sometimes you might want to stay out of the conflicts in that region, but most of the time it benefits you to be able to manipulate things in parts of the world that you don't have land in. Countries having a presence in a particular part of the world is measured in two different ways, either by holding a piece of land in that region or by having declared an interest in that region.
As a diplomatic player myself, I will do what I can to keep my infamy low but my relations high. Now, let's talk about diplomatic actions.
There are actually three types of diplomatic actions that a country can take. There are instant actions that have an immediate effect. There are ongoing actions which have an effect over time. And then there's pacts, which are permanent or semi-permanent agreements between two countries. Some examples of instant diplomatic actions include expel diplomats, which permanently, for a period of 5 years, hurts relations with a country and makes it so that they cannot be improved, and take on debt, which can only be issued against a country that's really deep in debt. You buy out that debt, and in turn, they owe you. These are instant effects, but can only be done when you have achieved certain relation threshold. Ongoing actions often cost you influence for as long as you maintain the ongoing action. Examples of that is improve and decrease relations, and bankrolling another country, which transfers a bunch of money from your treasury to theirs. Certain diplomatic actions can create an understanding between two countries that we call a pact. Some of those pacts have to be entered into by both parties mutually agreeing, and other pacts can actually be enforced upon the lesser country under certain circumstances. All pacts cost influence to maintain, some for only one side of the agreement and some for both. One example of a diplomatic pact is an alliance, which means that two parties can come to each other's aid even if they don't have an interest or a presence in the region where the other is being targeted. This is a kind of pact that costs influence for both parties. Another example of a pact is a customs union, which means that one country is enforcing their market upon another, and that only costs influence for the party doing the enforcing. It might still benefit the other party, and they may enter into it voluntarily, but they are always going to be the minor partner. As for subject pacts, these clearly have a major and a minor partner, the overlord and the subject. They cost influence for the overlord to maintain. And we have 6 of these in the game at the moment, ranging from protectorate and dominion to puppet and vassal. These different subject types have to adhere to different kinds of rules and enjoy various levels of autonomy. Some may be allowed to launch their own diplomatic plays, others cannot. Some inherit the head of state of their overlord. Instant actions, ongoing actions, pacts, including subjects. These diplomatic actions are all scripted in the game, by the way, for you modders out there. It is very possible to create your own kind of diplomatic interactions by just adding them to the system.
Diplomatic actions are far from the only way to interact with other countries. Let's take a look at diplomatic plays.
After a country has declared its interest in a region and decided on what it wants from that region, the country will initiate what we call a diplomatic play. The diplomatic play is a way for a country to enforce its demands on another country at the point of a sword. They will have the option to escalate this to a full-blown war, or hopefully for everyone's sake, someone backs down. The player will be able to see that there's 3 phases to it. The first phase is the opening moves. You have selected your target and what you want from them. You now have the ability to add additional demands to the list against this one nation that you're doing. During the diplomatic maneuvering phase, other countries who are not the direct participants will be able to declare support for a side. This might just be as a bluff in order to try and get one side to back down or the other, or it might be a full-blown commitment in order to help their ally or stop a rival. Once another nation declares its support for either side, the main participants in the diplomatic play will then be able to add additional war goals against those as a means of potentially trying to dissuade them from staying on the side, or if they decide to back all the way, as punishment for standing against you. Even if a potential partner declare their support for your side in the diplomatic play, that does not mean that they are going to stick with you till the end. Let's say you're Austria-Hungary and you want to take Bosnia from the Ottomans. You are able to get Russia to back you into this war, and you are now looking perfectly fine in a potential war fighting the Ottomans with Russia at your back. But then you decide to get a little greedy and say that you want Bulgaria from the Ottomans as well. This doesn't make the Russians extremely happy. They will refuse to back you in this because they feel that you're reaching for too much. All participants who have declared support for either side are now locked in. It is now a question of who blinks first. In the best case scenario, you get your demands. In the worst case scenario, you plunge the world into a war.
And that's all for this monthly update video for Victoria 3, but we'll be back again next month with more from the dev team. Until then, make sure to follow us on social media and subscribe to our newsletter to stay up to speed with all things Victoria 3.